Last Thanksgiving, my girlfriend and her family invited me to come over for the holiday. It was strange. We had only been dating for 2 weeks at that point, but honestly, I didn't mind. My girlfriend was absolutely stunning, and to get away from the hustle-bustle of everyday life and to travel out to meet her family sounded honestly very peaceful, especially for that time of year. As we were driving out to meet her family, she warned me that it would take quite a while. I entered the address in my GPS on my phone, and to my surprise, it was several hours away. She told me that her family lived in the middle of nowhere, but honestly, the scenic view was enough to make it well worth the trip. As we were approaching the house, she warned me that her family would be overexcited to see us, and that certainly was the case as we pulled in the driveway. Some of her family members were standing outside the home, and some in the frame of the front door, ready to greet us. As we entered the home, they made us comfortable and told us that dinner had arrived. I was eager to eat. The long trip made me so hungry. I sat down at the large dinner table and looked around, smiles facing me from every direction. I smiled and nodded back, and looked down at the delicious-looking food. Mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, casseroles, green beans, stuffing. But no ham or turkey, no central dish. It was a bit odd, but I assumed that it perhaps was a different tradition than my own. I excused myself and made my way to the restroom, as I honestly had to go after the long trip and needed to wash my hands before we ate. I locked the bathroom door, did my business, and then began to wash my hands. But as I smelled something off. It didn't smell honestly like something was cooking, but almost as if something had died. I looked around and saw the shower curtain that was slightly peeled back. I pulled it, and in the bathtub filled with ice was a garbage bag. A pretty stuffed garbage bag, if I do say so myself. I looked down at it, puzzled for a second. Then there was a large knock at the door, which frightened me and made me jump. It was my girlfriend. "Honey, are you coming?" "Yes, 1 minute," I said, as I went back to washing my hands, looking over my shoulder, though, at the garbage bag within the ice. I pulled out my phone in order to better see what was inside of the garbage bag, but as I did, I noticed that on the Maps app that I used to get to the house, it said that the address was vacant. There was no one living inside of this home. That, mixed with this odd-smelling garbage bag and the creepy smiles that the family made, left a pit in my stomach. Then, there was another knock at the bathroom door. A louder knock. "Open the door, son," a large man's voice said. I looked towards the window and cracked it open. It was just enough space. I squeezed my way out of the window and began to run towards my car. Something was definitely not right here. When I reached my car, I noticed that all 4 of my tires had been slashed. Just as I looked back towards the house, I saw the front door swing open quickly, and a few family members emerged. I bolted down the driveway and through the thick forest. I don't know what came over me, but I wouldn't stop running and refused to look over my shoulder. I ran all the way until I met civilization. I found a gas station and quickly ran inside, explaining my situation to the cashier at the front desk. We both called the police, and I notified them about the strange address. A few hours later, once they reached the place, they called me to inform me that there was no one at the address, except for a 17-year-old boy's body found in the bathtub. You could say I'm very thankful this Thanksgiving, and you'll be sure to know that I'll be much safer around the holidays. I promised my daughter that this would be the best Christmas she's ever had. Ever since my wife and I split up, we've had difficulties taking care of our young daughter, especially around the holidays. It was mid-November, and my daughter was over one afternoon. We were sitting on the couch, and she leaned over and smiled at me. I looked into her eyes. "Daddy, all I want for Christmas is my red bicycle." Of course, I knew exactly what she was talking about. A shiny red bike she's wanted for years, but it was something I simply couldn't afford with my low-paying job. However, I read an ad that a local department store was selling this exact bicycle on a very cheap discount, half off. I figured that on Thanksgiving, after my shift, I'd make my way over to this department store in order to pick up this bike to make this Christmas my daughter's best. I did just that, and as I parked, I was filled with excitement, knowing that I would finally make my daughter's Christmas gift come true. As I walked through the aisles, I noticed very quickly that many shoppers had already come and gone. As I made my way to the specific aisle, I realized that a woman who was walking past me had put the last bike in her shopping cart. "Excuse me, ma'am," I said. She turned and looked at me. "That's the last of that shiny red bike, and my daughter absolutely has to have it this Christmas." "I suppose you should have gotten here earlier then," the woman said, in a haughty attitude and voice. She turned around and walked down the aisle. I frowned. I had to make this my daughter's best Christmas. I went to the hardware section and bought a hammer. Later that night, I pulled into my driveway, making sure to take the red bicycle from my back seat and placing it in the attic. I, of course, was not going to spoil my daughter's best Christmas. The following morning, I lit a cozy fire, and taking a metal rod, I moved around some of the planks in order to make the fire grow. The peaceful morning atmosphere was interrupted when a hand knocked on the front door. When I swung the door open, before me stood a woman in a police uniform. "Good morning, sir. It's come to our attention that you, late last night, were at a local department store. We looked at some of the security footage from last night, and we'd like to ask you a few questions. Would you mind stepping outside?" I gripped the metal rod tight in my hand. I was not going to let anyone, not even this officer, ruin my daughter's best Christmas. The next day, I had custody of my daughter. We got in the car, with the bike in the back, and began to drive into the wilderness. I don't know where we were going, but I wasn't going to let anyone, not my wife, not the police, not any of those horrible Black Friday shoppers, ruin my daughter's best Christmas. Our universe is built upon the number 2. In our cells, DNA is composed of 2 helical threads. Matter has its opposite, antimatter. Computers run on a code built on 2 digits, 1 and 0. Likewise, religions are also structured around good and evil, 2 forces that oppose each other in both action and purpose. God has his counterpart, Satan. Jesus has his opposite, the Antichrist. This pattern even shows up in polytheistic religions and myths. Thor has his counterpart, Loki, and the Olympian gods in Greek mythology have their opposites, the Titans. However, one of our most popular mythological figures, Santa Claus, has lost the tail of his opposite. Called Krampus, this being dealt out punishments to the wicked children of the world. For the particularly nasty children, the Krampus administered the harshest of punishments, abduction and death. Over time, as mankind's command of its realm expanded, our technologies and our own actions took the places that were once held by mythological beings. Nowadays, parents indulge their children with gifts, replacing the old Santa Claus. However, there exist parents who snap and do unthinkable things to their children. Every year, our news media broadcasts stories of parents who went over the edge, almost like they were possessed by a demon. With no Santa Claus to reward the righteous, and no punishment for the wicked, both forces are unleashed indiscriminately against good and evil alike. For every naughty child rewarded, a counterbalance must exist. Yin must have a yang. I used to think that Santa Claus would only bring you things on Christmas Eve. But now I've learned that he can take things away from you too. I turned 8 years old this year, and all I wanted for Christmas was a shiny red fire engine. You know, the ones with the large wheels and the long hose? That one. My sister, Lily, really wanted a princess dolly. We were both very good this year, so when it was bedtime, it was hard to fall asleep. Lily fell asleep rather quickly, but for me, it was a big challenge. I managed to get a few hours in, but around midnight, I awoke to the sound of footsteps outside. Santa Claus. I snuck past Lily and my parents' bedroom and made my way to the living room with our large, green Christmas tree. There I saw Santa Claus coming into our house. It was weird, though. I used to think that Santa Claus would come down the chimney, not through an open window. But I was in such awe that I just wanted to see a glimpse of the magical man in red. He turned around and, to my surprise, he didn't look like Santa. I always thought that he had a large white beard and rosy cheeks, not curly black hair. But I just didn't mind. He looked at me, put his finger to his lips and said, "Shh, go back to sleep. Merry Christmas." I ran to my room and did just that, eager to wake up in the morning to see my shiny red fire engine. The next morning, I awoke to a shiny red fire engine. Only, it wasn't a toy. There were a bunch of police cars, fire engines, and officers surrounding my house. They made their way inside to greet my parents, who were frantic. I didn't see Lily, though, so I don't know if she got her doll. All I know is that my mommy and daddy said that Lily was gone. I guess Santa Claus can take things, and I guess I know what I should wish for next Christmas. I could never sleep well in hotels. I guess that's somewhat of an understatement. I could never sleep well in general, but hotels were the worst. Just the thought that the previous occupant of this bed is a complete stranger was repulsive in my mind, but that's besides the point. What I'm getting at is how this lack of sleep in hotels changed my life. Christmas. We were spending Christmas in a crappy hotel and not with family. Great. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I didn't enjoy the all-you-can-eat buffet of soggy hash browns and grits for Christmas Eve dinner. Of course, the first snow of the season had to cancel our flight down to Virginia. It was Christmas Eve, and I was trying to sleep in this bleak, saturated room. My mind was wandering what happened here to cause such an excessive amount of bleach needed. The room was nothing out of the ordinary. 2 beds, one for my dad and I, and the other for my sister and mom, a bathroom, and a stained microwave that looked like it was in good need of dusting. Somehow I escaped the room, and the stench of bleach, into a dreamless sleep. Waking up, I could tell it was early morning. My dad was next to me snoring, and he usually wakes up before 4 a.m. That's when it hit me. It's Christmas, and I was about to let this bad fortune ruin my favorite holiday. Looking across the bed at the clock to check the time is when I noticed it. The silhouette of a man about 6'3", across the room, staring at my mom sleeping. Still half asleep and caught up in the moment, I couldn't help but to think of Santa Claus. I realized how stupid the thought was, and horror soon filled my head. I choked back a shriek. I knew I couldn't let him see me awake, so I quietly put my head back down, pretending to sleep. My mind was racing. Someone was in my room, and I couldn't do anything. I was a scrawny 16-year-old, and this man looked like he was built like an ox. I wondered if I could wake up my dad in time, but I knew that wouldn't work. He slept like a rock. A bucket of water couldn't get him up fast enough. I was practically in tears. I'd never felt so helpless. For a second time, I choked back a scream. He was standing next to me, and I could feel and hear his repulsive breath on my face. It smelled like he'd been eating rotten meat for about a week now, with no thought to brush his teeth. If he didn't know I was awake, surely he did now. Seeing my face was contorted in fear. The breathing stopped, and I couldn't help the sigh of relief. I would have kicked myself, but there was no need. I heard the room door open and close. I launched out of bed. Nothing in the room was in disarray, and my family was still asleep. That couldn't have been a dream. I couldn't have imagined it. Feeling awake as ever, a horrible idea popped into my head, and before I could push it away, I was pulling the door open. Glancing back to the door in order to memorize the room number, I saw the giant spray-painted black X on the door. Had I seen this without prior experience, I probably would have thought it was just some stupid kids. I knew better, but not enough to know what I was in for. My heart skipped a beat, and there he was, turning the corner at the end of the hall. Why am I doing this? I tailed him down to the parking lot. He was nowhere in sight. One moment he's walking out of the lobby, and the next he's gone. Realizing how cold it is outside in the paper-thin pajamas, I returned to the lobby. No one was around. Strange. I could swear there's usually a night connoisseur. Adrenaline wearing off, I realized how stupid and rash my actions had been. He could have killed me. I cursed myself back up the stairs. I knew something was wrong when I got to my floor. The door to my room was wide open. I hadn't left it that way, right? I walked inside, and after a quick search of the room, I determined it's safe, and my family was still asleep. I locked the door and got back into bed, though I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I listened to my dad get up, and eventually my mom followed, but I still pretended to sleep. A few hours passed, and my parents got my sister and I up. We got into the car and made our way back to the airport. Digging through my bag to grab my iPod led to the finding of something that hadn't been there the previous day. A note that simply held 5 words I still think about to this day. I knew you were awake. It's now been 2 months since the hotel experience. I'm still scared for my life, and it gets worse every day. That note I found wasn't the only one. I still receive them. Of all the nights I had to come into the office, Christmas Eve would be one of those nights. I expected it though, as tonight was a big moment for one of our patients. For a little bit of context here, I work for a mental health clinic in my area. Essentially, I relay information from a variety of our patients back to the police headquarters in our town. I've been working with a man by the name of Patrick MacArthur, a man who suffers from DID, or dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personalities disorder. Every holiday season, especially with the onset of the Christmas holiday, Mr. MacArthur believes himself to be some form of a mythological creature, and this season, he deems himself to be Santa Claus. Let's try this again, Mr. MacArthur. Name? Kris Kringle, he said with a smile. I slouched back in my seat, knowing that this would be a hard case to crack. He seemed so genuine, and despite this being a delusion, I must say that it is at least a positive one. Unlike in years previous, Patrick has experienced more violent or darker tendencies. A few years back, Patrick believed himself to be the notorious Christmas Krampus, a demonic entity that abducts children in order to punish them for the wrong things they've done throughout the year. A sort of sidekick or companion piece to Santa Claus. We still can't find those kids, but I'm hoping tonight I can crack the case. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to know when you were going to die? It's a question that many people ask themselves. Well, I've had that opportunity. And, in turn, it's caused me to create a New Year's resolution. Last year, I was approached by him, the Reaper. Now you may call me crazy, but trust me, I'm not. He approached me and told me that I was going to die this year. No specific date, no specific details or times or anything like that. He just told me that this year would be my last. And here I am. It's New Year's Eve. It hasn't happened yet. I've been so paranoid this year. My resolution was to live each day to the fullest, but how can I do it looking over my shoulder every waking second, thinking he's going to be there? And here I am, New Year's Eve. Haven't seen him once this year, and with only less than an hour until the new year, I now question either his truthfulness or my sanity, and I can't tell which one is winning. And now I hear it. The knock on my front door. It won't stop. It's been going on for 10 minutes now, and it won't stop. I feel my heart pumping inside of my chest faster and faster at the thought. Maybe if I could just hold him off for a little bit longer. Maybe I can rearrange the deal or something. I'm not that old. Maybe I can. But he won't stop knocking. And I feel my heart rate getting faster and faster, and it's pumping like crazy, and I just want it to stop. I'm trying to get the sound of the knocking out of my head, but with the fireworks outside, it won't stop, and everything is getting faster and faster, and now everything's going blacker and blacker, and